Hello and welcome to a new episode of the series Laces of Ireland for Heritage Week 2023. Our guest today is lace maker and artist Fiona Harrington. Welcome, Fiona. How are you?
I'm good, Gabriella. Thanks for having me.
The first question I would like to ask you is, how did you get to lace? How did you discover lace? What was your first falling in love with lace?
Okay, so I came to lace, I suppose I could say, quite by accident. It was never part of my plan. I had no intention of learning how to make lace, and I certainly had no intention of using lace in my practice. So I had been working as an artist for about 10 years. I'd studied fine art at Crawford College, and in my early 30s, I decided I was going to go back to college, having spent 10 years working as a painter. And I decided I was going to do a degree in education because I had been working a lot in arts education, and I felt getting a qualification in that area would be good. So I went back to NCAD, and after about 2 weeks in the education course in NCAD, I just realized, no, this is not for me. I'm never going to be a secondary school teacher. So I moved into textiles, and I moved into textiles basically because it was the only place I could go to, really, because the courses had been started and the places were filled, but this particular course still had room. So I moved into textiles, and during that course, we went to a lecture, and the lecture was about an exhibition in Birmingham called Lost in Lace. So I decided to go and see the exhibition, and it was a fantastic exhibition that had a really big impact on me. So it was artisan designers from all over the world who were making work using lots of different types of materials, lots of different types of processes that were all kind of inspired by the aesthetics of lace, or the history of lace, or the social history of lace. And it kind of just triggered my interest in it. And I was thinking, what is this lace thing? Like, it must be really fascinating if all of these people are making such diverse work and it's based on this. So when I came back to Ireland after that, I kind of just started to research lace. It just triggered that interest in me, but it also triggered a memory for me that my mother was a lace maker, which I had forgotten about. And then I realized, I made the connection. I was like, well, hang on a second. If my mother made lace, and there's this like big history of lace worldwide, I also realized there's obviously a big history of lace in Ireland as well. So I started to research it, and I was looking for somewhere where I could learn how to make lace, not because I wanted to be a lace maker, but because I felt that if I was going to make work kind of based on lace, I should really have the basic understanding of how to make lace. So I came across the Kenmare Lace Centre in County Kerry, and I wrote to Nora Finnegan and asked her, would she teach me how to make lace? And she said yes. So in the summer of my third year, before I went into fourth year, so before I went into the final year of my degree, I spent 4 months in Kenmare learning how to make lace. And again, I really had no intention of kind of using lace in my practice. But once I started making lace, I realized the importance of it. So I realized how much history was contained in these tiny, tiny stitches, and I kind of changed my perspective then, and I started to ask myself, why is it that I feel I have to make work based on lace, and how come I can't make work using lace? And once I kind of started to ask myself that question, my perspective changed. And I decided then that that's what I'd like to do, that I wanted to use these traditional techniques and actually incorporate them into my arts practice, and use lace as a way to make art rather than make art based on lace. So it was a bit of that. It was kind of like a complete and utter fascination with the skills, but also a complete and utter like obsession with the history of lace. I was absolutely just I couldn't get enough of it. I was reading everything I could possibly find. So it was really about the technical side of things, the skill of it, and also the history of it that really, really appealed to me.
Fantastic. I knew that you're making Kenmare lace, but I think last year I happened to be in Sligo and I crossed the road and there was piece of yours, bobbin lace, a work in progress in one of the shop windows. Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
that was the first time I heard you were also making bobbin
Yeah,
lace. So tell us a little bit, are there any
yeah.
other?
Well, funnily enough, when I went to Kenmare, I actually learned, when I did the internship in Kenmare, I learned Kenmare needlepoint lace, I learned carrot and cross lace, and I learned bobbin lace as well.
So very diverse practices, but all
So I learned all the three laces there. So even though my main focus was needle lace, but I had actually learned carrot and cross lace and bobbin lace as well. So I in my earlier work I was combining carrot and cross lace with needle lace, and then once I became more skilled in bobbin lace, because I struggled with bobbin lace for about 10 years, and then I did 2 courses with Pierre Fichet, and that kind of changed things for me. I developed a much greater understanding of bobbin lace then. So since I did that course, I was then able to go and kind of work away on bobbin lace myself and create my own designs and actually make bobbin lace myself, rather than having to follow somebody else's pattern or always having to have a teacher standing over my shoulder telling me exactly what to do, which is the way it had been for me for 10 years with bobbin lace.
I understand. So can you talk a little bit about the materials and the techniques you are using? Because um, your art is very special. So you're incorporating lace into um, fine arts, especially painting, but also installations. So can you talk a bit about materials and techniques? Does it
Sure.
start with lace? Does it start with the piece and then lace comes after? In the case of paintings?
Yeah, certainly when I was doing kind of my lace paintings, I always use inverted commas for it. It always started with lace. So it was basically, lace was my drawing tool, and how can I use lace to kind of create the images that I want to create. And it was easy in one sense because everything was two-dimensional. So it was very much like a translation from my painting practice. I didn't have to, obviously I had to learn new skills and apply those skills, but I was still working kind of two-dimensionally, so that was pretty straightforward for me. And all of those collections used both carrot and cross and needle lace, and it was a combination of the two. So I used the needle lace to kind of to create the small little details, so the focal point of the image would always be made in needle lace, and then the background of the image would always be made in carrot cross lace. And that made sense to me because needle lace is so tiny, whereas with carrot and cross lace, you can generally tend to work a little bit bigger anyway because you're working onto a pre-made net. So that kind of worked for me. And then when I moved, when I started my MA in 2019, I was more so thinking kind of sculpturally then. And most of my work since then has been sculpture based. So I'm not really working two-dimensionally anymore. Although some obviously when you're making lace, it's flat anyway, so it's two-dimensional, but then you take it off that backing, either off the backing fabric for needle lace or off the pillow in the case of bobbin lace, and then you're just applying it to something different. So I suppose the themes throughout my work have been similar, but it might be a little bit more focused now on the idea of kind of the domestic space and domesticity, and kind of women's work both inside the home and outside the home. So I'm really interested in kind of the ideas and concepts around that. Um, and a lot of the work started during my MA, which I started in September 2019. And then in March 2020, COVID hit, and I found myself at home in my house all the time. So I was really using what I was seeing around me every day, and these kind of household objects that were kind of fascinating to me because they weren't worth anything like monetary wise, but a lot of kind of these household objects that we surround ourselves with, they're of huge sentimental value, a bit like laces. Laces often pass down from one generation to the next. And when my mother died, I got all of her like tableware, her knives and forks and plates and all of these things that were kept in like in the good room, in the press in the good room, that were never taken out apart from once a year at Christmas time. And this kind of really, this whole idea of having these things in your life, these kind of collections of objects that were given as presents or things that you collected yourself, but never really used, but they were really highly treasured, I just found really fascinating. And I created a piece based on eggshells, using actual eggshells at the beginning for my MA project. And that kind of started at the beginning of COVID. And then it moved on, and that really developed when my husband broke a plate that had belonged to my mother. And I immediately just thought, don't throw that out. I'm going to use that. And that's when I started kind of exploring this idea of kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing crockery. And they repair it with gold. And I thought, I wonder, could I repair this with lace? And that's kind of what I started looking at then, how I could repair these objects using lace and extend the story of them. Because it's sad in a way if you've had something all of your life and then suddenly it breaks. And then, the society that we live in now kind of determines anything, if it doesn't, if it's broken or if it breaks, that you just throw it out. It's so disposable. And I just thought, no, this isn't going to be thrown out. I'm going to somehow I'm going to somehow keep this alive. So that's what I've been looking at for the past couple of years.
Thank you for this introduction to your work. The next question I would like to ask you is, at the moment, you're very well known internationally. How did this happen? Because I remember you spoke in Limerick about daring to go to an international event for the first time.
Was that when I went over to New York? Was that
Yes.
one? Yeah, yeah. And again, like a lot of these things kind of happened kind of purely by chance and just by kind of meeting people. So I decided to go to the World Lace Congress in 2018 in Bruges, and that was a fantastic decision. And I had no idea, I didn't know anybody. I was going by myself. I'd never been to anything like this before. I'd no idea what was going to happen. But when I went there, I met various different people from around the world. And I bumped into Elena Carnegie Laux, who's one of the founders of the Brooklyn Lace Guild. And there was actually a group of them from Brooklyn over there. And I would have known them just from social media. And so we had all started following each other, these kind of new lace makers, I suppose, had started following each other. And we just kind of hatched this plan that like New York Textiles Month was the following September. And I think Bruges was in June or July or something like that. And we just hatched this plan to go over, do a talk in Brooklyn, do a demonstration, and it would be in line with like the events for New York Textiles Month. So like, and it happened, I think I went home that night and booked a flight. Like it was just so kind of random and so quick. But they're nearly the best decisions sometimes in life, the ones that you don't spend too long thinking about. Um, and again, that was a brilliant opportunity. But I also was very privileged to be able to go to the exhibition that Devon Thine had curated in the Hunterdon Art Museum, called Lace Not Lace. And unlike the exhibition that I had seen in Birmingham, which basically started my lace journey, everything in this exhibition was made from lace. So everything was made from either bobbin lace or needle lace. So again, this was amazing for me to see this and to kind of be open to the fact that there were so many people around the world who were seemed to be interested in doing the same thing that I wanted to do, which was taking traditional lace techniques and kind of pushing it forward a little bit. Because at that time as well, I suppose before I went to Bruges, I did feel very alone here, on this tiny little island on the edge of Europe, and I wasn't really using a lot of social media and stuff. And even just trying to get somebody to teach you how to make lace. I mean, I was lucky because I did the internship in Kenmare, but like on a regular basis, like it's just so hard. It would often involve like a lot of travel to somewhere. The workshops often happened on days that I had to work elsewhere, so I couldn't go there. And they were often very expensive, and not necessarily because the class was expensive, but because the cost of petrol to travel to those places would be expensive, So it just seemed so difficult. So going to New York and kind of being exposed to all of that and seeing this exhibition was absolutely fantastic. And then, like, I mean, I think really when you work as an artist, you're so used to making proposals for things. You're just constantly applying for things. I would kind of say 60% of what I do is writing applications and sending them off. And 99% of those applications result in a no. Do you know what I mean? It's constant rejection after rejection. And then eventually you'll get something that kind of works. And that gives you a little bit of a perk and a little bit of a push to kind of keep going. So after Brooklyn, I applied to be part of an exhibition in Philadelphia and I was accepted. And 25 Irish artists went over to Philadelphia to exhibit our work. And I also did some demonstrations and workshops in Philadelphia. And again, that was a fantastic experience. And it seems to me like wherever I go with lace, people are really, really fascinated by it. They really, really are. And there's such an amount of interest out there, and like it just, I don't know, sometimes it feels like it's a little bit hidden or something, um but there definitely, anytime I've traveled anywhere, the interest has been incredible. In May just gone, I spent a week in Montreal, as part of a homemaking symposium. So it was a series of events, lectures, talks, discussions, exhibitions, and I was there for the week, kind of a live exhibition whereby I was kind of making lace. Um, and people were coming in talking to me and sharing stories, and then I did some presentations as well. But like for the entire week, I was just so busy because so many people wanted to come and talk about lace making. So I mean, it really, there really is a lot of interest out there.
And then recently you were in the National Gallery.
Correct. Yeah. And again, like, quite surprised by how much people were interested in lace making. So I was in there again making lace, working on the piece actually that you had seen in Sligo last year. And that was the piece that came to Montreal with me. So that piece is really well traveled at this point. Um, but again, I think the bobbin lace is very impressive. Do you know what I mean? Because that particular piece has like, I don't know, 110 bobbins or something on it, you know, and the bobbins themselves are lovely with all the little spangles and everything like that. So when when people came into the studio space in the gallery and they saw this, I mean, they were obviously going, "Oh my God, what is this? Like, how do you do this? How do you keep track on things?" You know, so they were pretty fascinated by that. And then the amount of people that came into me with their own pieces of lace, and they were like, "I have this at home. What kind of lace is it? How old do you think it is? What do you think I should do with it?" Do you know what I mean? The amount of people that had these kind of, and they knew themselves that they were treasures, even though they knew absolutely nothing about them, but they knew enough to keep them safe at home somewhere, you know? So it was lovely. It was great. I was 2 weeks in there and it was fantastic.
Yeah, we're hoping to have a similar event would bring out your lace in Limerick for Heritage Week.
Oh,
Uh,
brilliant.
and it's always a nice experience because people are interested to, they tell you something of the history of the piece, but then they don't know anything about the techniques or how it was used. And
Yeah.
any events you'd like to recommend, or any projects you're working on at the moment that you would like to give us a glimpse into?
Sure. Yeah. Well, actually, this is very good timing because I have spent the last 18 months working with a group of crochet lace makers in Dublin. So, with the Irish Crochet Lace Revival and also various other crochet lace makers in and around the Clondalkin area, or lace makers who were connected to the Clondalkin area, although they may not be living there now. And we've been working on a project which is basically reimagining the Clondalkin Lace Tower. So I'm not sure whether you're aware that Sybil Connolly, the fashion designer, had an atelier in Clondalkin, and there was lots of lace makers there who worked for her making lace which were used in her designs. So there's a very rich history of lace making in the area. And of course, the backdrop to where they were working was this beautifully preserved round tower. So the project that we've been working on for the past 18 months is recreating the round tower in crochet lace. So I didn't make any lace for this project, but I was kind of in charge of taking all of the lace from the people who made it. So there was many, many, many hands involved, and then bring it all together into the final piece. So we basically just finished it, and the launch of that is next Wednesday, the 16th, in Clondalkin Library at 6:30. and that is kind of part of Heritage Week as well. So the piece then will be in Clondalkin Library for a couple of weeks, and then it's going to do a tour of South Dublin County Council libraries, and then eventually it will live permanently in the visitor centre in Clondalkin. So that's very exciting, because it has very much been a labour of love for the past 18 months. There's been a huge amount of work involved in it. But yeah, delighted to say now that we're almost there, almost there.
We're looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
And finally, where can people find you online?
So I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle on Instagram is Fi Harrington, so Fi for Fiona Harrington. My website is still there, but it needs to be updated. It shows all of my earlier work, my kind of lace paintings, but I haven't updated it since I started working with sculpture. So I do plan to do that again. It's just whenever I find the time. And I do use Facebook, although I tend to interact with it less because I find it very user unfriendly. And it just frustrates me whenever I go onto it now. For some reason, just things don't work, and I don't know why. But that's just the way it is. So I do post things if I'm doing a workshop or an exhibition or something. I'll post it on Facebook. But if you need to contact me, I'd say the best way to do it would be Instagram, or my phone number and email address is available on my website anyway. So people can always find how to contact me if they need to contact me.
Thank you very much, Fiona. This was a great session. Goodbye, and hopefully we'll see each other again quite soon. So, bye.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you very much.